Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 232, recorded November 23rd, 2019. Hello everybody and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I am your host, my name is Tyson, and joining me today as always is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about Mr. Robot and The Good Place as usual. We're going to be discussing Mr. Robot 407, Proxy Authentication Required, and The Good Place Season 4, Episode 9, The Answer, which is the fall finale of the series. So we're going to be done talking about that for a little bit until it comes back.
It comes back in January.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're not going to be talking about The Good Place again until January. January 9th is when the next episode airs.
But we're going to still be talking about Mr. Robot, and we might throw some other stuff in. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go.
We'll just wing it.
But right now, we're going to start off our conversation with Mr. Robot. We're going to be talking about, like I said, 407, Proxy Authentication Required. This was a bottle episode.
Yes.
That was structured like a play in 5 acts.
Again, really cool. Esmail is playing with form. He's been doing a lot of that this season.
Playing with structure.
It's like he knows it's the last season, so he's just going all out. Like, he's just doing everything he wants to do.
So before we even get into the episode, what did you think about the structure of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. I liked it. I thought, like, it was really... I enjoyed the fact that it was just focused on Elliot and Vera and Elliot's therapist.
Krista.
Yeah, Krista. You know, there wasn't like... That's the only... Again, you said this is a bottle episode. Yeah, it's the only storyline that we touch upon in this episode. We don't get into what's happening with Darlene or anything else in this episode.
The whole thing takes place in an apartment with 2 rooms, basically.
So basically the cliffhanger with Darlene and the woman from the Dark Army and the FBI agent.
It's not yet addressed.
It's not addressed. That's next week. So so this is like super focused on just Elliot's storyline right now. And yeah.
1 apartment, 2 rooms, 6 actors, 5 acts.
Brilliant.
It's like a play. It's set up like one of those like one set plays that you see a lot of now.
And the thing about that is you would think like that's super limiting, but this is like the most impactful episode of the season.
See, like I normally wouldn't like this play structure.
Right.
But I think for what this episode is about, it works.
It works for yeah, exactly. It works for the episode.
Because it focuses on the performances.
Yes.
And the performances were great, by the way, especially Rami Malek's Elliot at the very end of the episode.
Yeah, Rami Malek's Elliot. Vera was an amazing performance. Like, the dude who plays Vera freaking killed it. Yeah, I love this episode.
And who can forget Peanuts and Javi?
And Peanuts and Javi, yeah.
Those are the real pillars of this show.
Yeah. They're alright.
Everything rests upon their shoulders.
Yeah, everything rests upon their shoulders.
All the emotional drama is weighed on, Peanuts making fun of Mr. Robot's name as being Nickelodeon shit.
This is where Vera is trying to make good on his plan to break Elliot and then build him back up.
Vera's got all sorts of absurd plans.
Yeah, he has all these absurd plans, like...
I'm gonna control the whole city. Every child, adult, store owner is gonna be selling my product.
Right, yeah, exactly.
At a certain point, to who?
Yeah.
Everyone's selling your product. Who are they selling it to?
Yeah, who are they selling it to? Yeah, if everybody's selling, and he's like, even the cops are gonna be selling my product. I'm like, really? It's like, I don't know how you're gonna count. Like, Elliot's a good hacker, but he ain't that good. Holy shit. I don't know what the hell he wants Elliot to do exactly.
So this episode starts with Elliot kind of, coming to... Well, actually, it starts with him. We said that it was a bottle episode in the apartment, but it really starts with him in a trunk of a car.
Yes, it starts... Yeah, the rest of the episode takes place in the apartment, but for, the opening credits takes place inside the trunk of the car, where... you're not seeing things from Elliot's perspective, though. You're seeing, like, you're looking at Elliot, but you're inside the trunk, so it's dark, so you can't see anything, and you're just hearing, like, Elliot's breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really claustrophobic, like.
And it goes on for quite a while.
It goes on for quite a while. It made me, to be honest, it made me uncomfortable. And I couldn't wait for it to stop and for them to open the trunk and let Elliot out. So I'm like, oh my god, end this. I don't know. But that's just me.
So then they're in the apartment, and Elliot's trying to see Krista. He doesn't know if Krista's alive. Mr. Robot's telling him she's probably dead. He's trying to figure out a plan of escape, and he's like, I'm not going to try to get out of here without getting Krista. So he keeps pushing on that, and you can see that this is bothering Vera. Vera's like, come on, man. We're family now. Like, this should be about us. Why do you keep talking about this bitch?
Right, exactly.
Vera's getting frustrated. It leads to the coolest shot in the episode, which is Vera, before he goes into the other room where Krista is, you see it like this high arcing shot that goes over the room that Elliot's in, through the wall, and then over the room that Krista's in. And when it goes through the wall, it goes through a fireplace. And so you see like the fire between the walls. It's a really cool shot.
It's a really awesome shot, yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. They did a shot similar in the one shot episode with in E Corp where the building was being raided, and they had the one shot where it went overhead and like it crossed between where you could see outside the building and inside in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
It is very similar to that, like it was kind of I think a callback to that in a way, but like a really beautiful, just cool shot.
Right.
As I said, Vera's got all sorts of absurd plans. He finally ends up reuniting Elliot and Krista, and he's going on and on about how wants to meet Mr. Robot, and he wants to take over New York, and he's talking about how he went to a
voodoo person.
Yeah. Who told him that he needed to go back to his home to Manhattan and find his partner, who is Elliot, apparently.
Yeah. Like all this crazy shit,
Yeah. And so he eventually starts pushing for, and I think our discussion on this episode is going to be rather short just because although it's a great episode, there's not a lot of stuff that happens.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot that happens. It's like, if you want to break it down plot-wise, it's Vera, Vera kidnaps Elliot, Vera convinces Elliot convinces Vera to let him see Krista, Vera convinces Mr. Robot to come out, they have an exchange.
Mr. Robot offers up all the money that they're gonna steal from Deus.
Yes.
As that's what you could do to have power and money. They're impressed by it, but it's not really what they want. Vera still wants to break Elliot. And so he forces like a therapy session, which Krista fights back on a little bit. She's like, we can't do this. We need a controlled environment. We can't have any people around. Vera sends Peanuts and Javi away, which is funny because they're like, man, but this was getting good. I wanted to see what happened next. And, but they send them away, and now it's a therapy session at gunpoint, basically, with Vera holding Krista and Elliot at gunpoint, forcing them to go through a therapy session. And they go into kind of the quintessential moment of Elliot's life being that when he jumped out the window.
Yes.
And we'd initially thought, like, way long ago that he had been pushed out the window, and then we found out, no, he had jumped out the window, and there's been all sorts of, like, weird details about that moment. Like, what exactly was happening, what exactly motivated that moment. And there's been like conflicting stuff because Elliot's an unreliable narrator.
This is the brilliance of the twist in this episode, is because that the incident where Elliot fell out the window, either he was pushed or he threw himself out the window, it's never been definitively settled. It's never been earlier, it's like Darlene told Elliot that he jumped out the window himself. Before that, Elliot believed his father pushed him out the window, but Darlene told him at one point that he did it. It had nothing to do with his dad, and we thought it was settled, but it still wasn't settled. It was still kind of like a the events surrounding it was, so we even if we accept on face value what Darlene tells Elliot, we still don't know why Elliot did it. And Elliot doesn't know because he can't remember the facts around that incident, So he doesn't even know. Like it's been like one of these overarching mysteries throughout the series.
So as they start kind of making progress on this in the therapy session, Mr. Robot's like, stop this now, you have to stop this.
Yeah, Mr. Robot is freaking the fuck out. He's like, you gotta stop this. Like, he's telling Elliot, you can't know this. And Elliot's like, Elliot like screams at him at one point. He's like, be quiet. And Mr. Robot, you can see like there's panic on his face. Like he does not want Elliot to know whatever this is. And it's funny because Vera kind of stumbles on this pressure point by accident. Like it's like Vera's looking at these files. It's not like he knows what he's looking for. He just stumbles on this.
Yeah, and so Vera doesn't even really know what's going on until Krista reaches a certain point in which Mr. Robot basically gives up at that point and says, I can't protect you anymore. And
they reach a point where like...
pieces out.
Yeah, he pieces out because because finally Mr. Robot says, you know what, I can't protect you anymore. Yeah, and he leaves. He leaves. Yeah. And then we find out why. We find out exactly why Mr. Robot was freaking out and why Mr. Robot had to leave. And it's a doozy. It is a fucking doozy.
You could see it coming.
You could see it. I saw it. Yeah, you could see it coming because they build to it.
I was actually talking to my mom about this episode in the car today, and she was saying that, like, she had always thought that was the case, even before it was in the plot.
Oh, right.
Because she said, like, just Elliot's damage, the kind of damage he has, like, fits more with that. Like, my mom was, like, a teacher, so she's dealt with lots of kids and stuff that have issues.
Interesting.
And so she was saying, like, it's the kind of way in which he's damaged has always kind of played to her as if he had been, like, molested or something.
Interesting. So she could tell that just by the way the character was written before they did any kind of reveal.
Oh, like way seasons back.
Oh, that is awesome.
At least that's what she said.
That's like if she's not lying, that's a testament to like the writing.
But here's the thing is like, since this episode is aired, and I'm saying this intentionally without revealing what the big thing is yet, because we're getting to that, but since this episode is aired, people have gone back and like watched, because there are multiple scenes, not just that pushing out the window thing, but there are multiple scenes throughout the series.
Right.
Especially the flashback scenes to Elliot's childhood that have like little weird ambiguities to them. And when you add this context of what ends up, the reveal that ends up happening here, it like recontextualizes those moments and all of a sudden they have like a whole different meaning.
Right.
And so like I do think it was planned and held ahead.
And see, these are the kinds of twists I love. The twists that are planned and they're well thought out and they make sense within the context of everything comes before. This is one of those things that this is one of those this changes everything, that literally changes everything while remaining consistent with what came before without having to retcon.
Well, I'd say it's less that changes everything, it just recontextualizes everything.
Oh,
it gives you a whole different perspective on everything you already knew.
It gives you a whole different perspective, but changes the show going forward because Mr. Robot cannot be a part of the show after this. It literally can't. He had to peace out, and we find out why. And once you get to the reveal, you realize, oh shit, we know why he left, and he cannot come back. It's impossible.
Well, the thing is, Krista's talking to Elliot, and she's talking about the moment in which he was about to jump out the window. And we know now from him talking to his sister that he wasn't pushed out the window, that he had jumped. But we also know that in that moment, he had told his sister to hide.
Yeah, he told his sister to hide.
And so Krista's like, well, why did you say that? And then as this negotiation starts happening, Elliot realizes that this was when Mr. Robot first came into his life, which means he came into his life before the window incident.
Yeah, which means he came into his life before the window incident. And he asks Mr. Robot, and Mr. Robot just replies, I showed up when you needed me.
Yeah, he keeps saying that. He keeps being vague about it.
I showed up when you needed me. I showed up when you needed me.
So, I mean, without further ado, I guess.
Yes, without...
It ends up coming out. Krista says, why would you be so scared?
And Elliot...
Why would you be so scared of his father?
Is remembering this now. Elliot couldn't remember... I want to say, like, Mr. Robot was repressing these memories, hiding them from Elliot.
Yes. That was his purpose, basically.
Yeah, that was his purpose. And then Elliot remembers. And without further ado, he was doing that because his dad was molesting him.
Yes. This, is a huge moment, and we'll get back to it because I want to continue with the episode because there's another kind of big event in the episode. Not as big as that, obviously.
Yeah, not as big as that.
But I want to talk about how things recontextualize after this. But moving on, before we get to that, in this moment of realization that he had this, this blows away Vera too. Vera doesn't realize it.
Vera doesn't. This is I think this is far beyond anything Vera was actually expecting. Like, Vera didn't know what the fuck let's be honest. Vera didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He had no clue.
He wanted to bust Elliot open and find the thing that was going to, make him his.
Right.
But he didn't know what that was. He knew it was there. He didn't know what it was, and he just wanted to bust it open. I think it's made pretty clear that Krista was pretty well aware of what it was.
Yeah, it was made pretty clear.
But that she was going very slow with Elliot towards that reveal because nobody should learn that way. Like you should learn slowly.
And especially from Elliot's reaction upon his realization, which great performance by Rami Malek. But he's just...
Oh, and he's freaking out and saying, no.
Yeah, the exact opposite reaction of what you would want a patient in that situation to be like.
Yeah.
And so Elliot's freaking out, and then Vera comes in and tries to continue his plan.
Vera takes this moment to kind of close his deal,
to close his deal. He's like, okay, well, he's broken, now I'm gonna build him back up and own him, and
Vera implies that he was also a victim of molestation.
Yeah, he implies that. We don't know how true that is, or if he's just saying that to get to Elliot. Vera is very unreliable, so we don't know how true that claim is.
But if you think about how fucked up Vera is, it might make sense.
It might make sense. Yeah, I can believe it, but at the same time, it's it's not, Vera's not especially Vera's talking to Elliot, but he has an agenda here. So again, it's hard to say whether he's telling the truth.
Vera is like Mr. Robot's version of Tuco from Breaking Bad.
Yes.
And either of those characters, if it came out that they were molested, it would make sense.
It would make sense too. Yeah.
But yeah, so Elliot is freaking out. Vera starts to come in to comfort him. He starts giving him this whole motivational speech about now that you've weathered the storm, you become the storm. All this nonsense to try to kind of...
all this shit.
Inspire Elliot. And then he says his ending line, which is, I see you now.
And to Vera's credit, it almost works. It almost works. It seems like he seems to be able to reach Elliot. But at that moment, Krista stabs him in the back.
You hear a wet thud sound, yeah.
You hear a wet thud sound, and there's a knife in his back, and he falls over, and there's Krista standing over him. And it's you forgot about something, Vera.
So now Elliot's been broken, but there's nobody there to reform him properly.
No, except for, I guess his therapist.
Krista is, I guess, the most equipped to do it, actually.
Yeah,
but they're in a situation now where they have, two of Vera's thugs outside the door.
Right, exactly. So we don't know.
And it's not something you're going to be able to do right away. And you're going to wonder,
they're going to come in.
You have to wonder how they're going to get Elliot's recovery from this. And it starts to make sense if you look at, there's I think 13 or 14 episodes this season, and this is only episode 7, and it already feels like it's moving so quick. And then you reach this point and it's okay, yeah, we're going to need some time to deal with this trauma. This is going to resonate for a few episodes,
I wonder if this is what's going to bring that third personality out.
It might be, we were predicting that Vera was going to reach Elliot's other personality.
Yeah, but apparently it wasn't going to happen, play out like that.
Yeah, so if his personality serve a purpose, if Mr. Robot was to protect him from that, then there's going to be a certain point in which this other personality is needed.
We have to assume if he has a third personality, like they revealed earlier in the season, that personality also serves a purpose.
I've also heard, and this relates back to, did you ever play Xenogears on PS1?
No.
The main character in that game had multiple personalities as well. And one of the personalities that, like, I think the last one that you discover of his is like a child version of him.
Right.
That's like been shielded from all the trauma in his life. And I'm kind of wondering maybe that's what we're going to get. Maybe his third personality is his traumatized version of Elliot. I'm just saying, that's aware of everything that happened.
I'm just saying,
him.
like, it seems to be a prime time for that to come out because Mr. Robot is gone now.
Yeah.
So it seems to be like the prime time for that. Like, Mr. Robot is gone, so any barrier preventing this third personality to come to the forefront is probably just gone.
What's interesting is are they actually, is Mr. Robot really gone? Like, is this the last we've seen of him?
Yes, I would say so.
Because Christian Slater is like kind of the second headline actor on the show. And we're halfway through the last season.
He is literally a manifestation in the image of Elliot's father. And now that Elliot knows his father was a monster who abused him, how can Elliot have Mr. Robot? How could Elliot have Mr. Robot as a protector? That's like saying,
it just makes you wonder,
my
how
abuser
can the show,
is my protector. That can't happen.
How can the show wipe out Christian Slater's character halfway through this last season?
Oh, they can.
That's what I'm kind of wondering. Like, there's other things they could do, of course.
You know they can, because Sam Esmail, he's not afraid to take those risks. He's not afraid to do bold shit like that. You know, like you wouldn't have thought Angela was going to be killed off in the very first episode of the season. A lot of people were blindsided.
Yeah, like it's so early on. Yeah. In what felt like a recap of this. You know?
Angela was killed off not only in the first episode of the season, but in like the first 5 minutes of the first episode of the season, which nobody saw that coming.
In the first scene that was seamlessly transitioned from one of the last scenes of the last season.
The last season, yeah.
So it felt like there was like a moment in that first episode that we talked about where like you went like, oh shit, this isn't a recap anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like she's dead.
And you're like, oh shit, did that just happen? And it's like, yep. I mean, yeah, it is Sam Esmail, he's not afraid to pull his punches.
Yeah, it'll be interesting though.
He also did it again with Tyrell Wellick. We didn't think Tyrell Wellick was gonna die that soon. He got killed off in a pretty, undramatic manner that, like, I didn't think was gonna happen.
It's also part of, like, the hero's journey trope, too, that, like, you have your support system start to disappear.
Right, right.
So it makes sense in that sense, too. Like, not just Mr. Robot disappearing, but these other people. Of course, Christian Slater could have other roles in the show because it's also his father if they do more flashbacks about that.
Right, if they do more flashbacks about to what actually happened between Elliot and his father, you know, Christian Slater will obviously be in those scenes.
Let's talk about how things are recontextualized now. And before even going into that, this relates to the Christian Slater thing. I've seen some people bring up a really interesting concept, which is Elliot's an unreliable narrator.
Yes.
We have these flashbacks from his childhood. Are some of those flashbacks just Mr. Robot and not his dad?
We know for a fact that Elliot is unreliable narrator from season 2. When we went through season 2 thinking Elliot was living with his mom and doing all these things, and we find out...
I thought that was season 3, wasn't it?
I thought that was season 2.
I think that was season 3.
Okay, season 3. But it was like the season where, like, Elliot was... You know, we thought Elliot was living with his mom and that he was doing all these things, and it turned out he was in prison the whole time, and he flat out tells the viewer that he lied to you about all that because, you know, he didn't trust you. And that was like just Sam Esmail hammering home that Elliot is an unreliable narrator, and you shouldn't believe Elliot all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but what I'm wondering though is that as an unreliable narrator, and now knowing that Mr. Robot existed way back in his childhood because of this trauma, we have to ask ourselves, are some of these flashback scenes we've seen between Elliot and his dad actually just Elliot?
Right. Is it? Yeah, right.
And Mr. Robot, you know?
Right. We don't know. We don't even know if they're the veracity of them, you know? We don't know how true they are. They could be like Elliot, like they could be things that actually happen, but they could be like an idealized version of those events that maybe like either Elliot or Mr. Robot created for Elliot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't know how true it puts everything in context because, yeah, Elliot's memories of his father now are completely unreliable.
Yeah, like I said, it recontextualizes everything.
Yes.
So That's interesting. You know what the scene is that everyone's talking about, though, now, is the movie theater scene from his childhood.
That's the one I was thinking of, where his father, like, passes out, and Elliot sneaks into the theater by himself. It seems like he starts talking to Mr. Robot in the theater.
It's not just that, though, because, like, in that scene, there's a moment where his father is apologizing to him, and what we think it is, originally, is that this is because Elliot had outed his father's illness to his mom. Like, this is all the details we think of. And Elliot says, "You're not sorry, you're just sick and don't want to admit it." And now that's completely recontextualized. Does he mean he's sick with cancer, or does he mean something else?
Right.
So there's like all sorts of like little moments like that. There's his relationship with his mom is completely recontextualized now.
Right.
You know, like, because if he told his mom he was being molested and then she didn't react well to that and couldn't accept it and became abusive.
Right.
This colors a whole different shade to their relationship. Like, there's so many different layers on that. We have to ask ourselves, what does Darlene know?
Right. We don't know what Darlene knows. I'm not sure what Darlene knows, to be honest. Because
that's exactly the thing, we don't know.
She's never brought it up. And we don't know if she's ever witnessed the abuse personally or if she's even aware of it.
Yeah, but she's very protective of Elliot.
She is.
Even after being shit on relentlessly by him.
She is, but you could also attribute that to their mom being physically abusive as well.
Yeah, but that's an experience they both went through.
Yeah, that's an experience.
Whereas, like, this is something that she's protective of him, so it could imply something. There's so much that's recontextualized here. Like, at a certain point, after this is over, I think I'm gonna want to, like, re-go through the whole series.
Well, the one thing that's interesting with regards to Darlene is when Elliot's dad comes in the room, he tells Darlene to hide,
Yes.
Which assumes, like, like Darlene was potentially also a victim of this.
Or he was worried she would become a victim.
Or he was worried. He was clearly worried about Darlene in that moment.
So there's a lot of like I said, this is something that's going to require a rewatch.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I'm going to have to go through this whole series again.
And like I said, like, this is what I appreciate about the twist is that it's organic, it's planned. This wasn't an ass pull at the last minute.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that annoys me more than anything, it is, twists that are just total ass pulls that exist just to be twists. Like, oh my god, guys, that were not planned.
You mean like the weird sexual chemistry moment between Deborah and Dexter?
Yeah, that was stupid. Yeah, that's bad writing.
This is, I think when I was first watching this episode, I was kind of nervous and a little bit. Like, I was kind of like, is he just using molestation as a plot device? Like, in a crude way, and like, I was kind of like a little nervous about it, but like, when you look back and when you like participate in discussion about the episode and you start to realize how, as I've said, it recontextualizes the whole show, it becomes a point of like, okay, this isn't a cheap effect, this isn't like, oh yeah, like, how can we exert the most sympathy in the biggest shock moment? Oh, he was molested.
This wasn't a cheap thing. This was clearly well thought out, well planned.
Yeah, and then they put this focus with this play structure because it's such this important seminal moment.
Right, such an important moment for the series.
Yeah, that it's just I feel like when I first watched it, I was a little bit worried and a little bit doubtful.
Right.
Even after the reveal, like if it was a good move, and then now I've come around to like thinking it's actually kind of brilliant. And I'm eager to see what else is happening. I'm wondering. I think next week might just be focused on Darlene and her side of the story. And I think if that's the case, it's probably the right thing to do because Elliot's, he needs some time.
Yeah, Elliot needs some time. Yeah, I think next week's gonna focus on Darlene.
And it's going to be fascinating watching it with that context now, because now we're going to be analyzing everything she does.
Yeah, we're going to be analyzing everything she does.
Like, she mentions her brother. What is she saying about her brother? Why is she saying it that way? What's that look in her face? We're going to be analyzing every little detail of everything she does now.
They're going to be trying to force her to give up her brother.
Yes. So that's going to be interesting. But that's Mr. Robot. Unlike The Good Place, Mr. Robot is continuing week to week, so we're still going to be discussing that next week.
Yeah, Mr. Robot's not taking a break until it ends.
Yes. The Good Place is going to be having it did have a fall finale, and so it's not going to be coming back until January, and that's what we're going to be discussing right now. The Good Place fall finale, Season 4, Episode 9, The Answer.
This is an episode that's all about Chidi.
Yeah.
Literally.
What did I tell you before about how I love framing devices?
It's practically it's interesting. Like it's focused on Chidi. There's new material, but it's almost like practically a clip show almost.
Yeah, but I like the weird, it's stupid, but I like it, the weird framing device of like the slow motion, like Jason's drink splashing.
Jason's disgusting drink splashing, like, in slow motion as like Michael's trying to like give Chidi his memories back in the correct order without messing anything up, because Michael explains at the beginning, Chidi's lived 1 lifetime on Earth, then 800 lifetimes in the afterlife, then another lifetime on Earth, then another lifetime in the afterlife. So, I gotta be very careful about how I do this.
Yeah. What's really cool about this is it kind of themes with what we were talking about with Mr. Robot. The idea of recontextualizing things. And it's not for us, though. It's not like us recontextualizing Chidi. It's like Chidi recontextualizing himself.
Right, exactly.
Through his flashbacks, through these things.
We see as Michael is restoring Chidi's memories, we see like Chidi like reliving moments of his life. Like, starting with Chidi's birth, which is a funny scene because Chidi is born, and they name him, and then immediately, like, his parents, like, jokingly, like, offer him a choice. They say something like, "Do you like the name Chidi? Would you like another name?" And we see, like, Chidi starts crying a little bit, and then we see, like, the first hint of Chidi. Chidi's just born, and already he has anxiety over a choice.
About making choices, yeah. They said, I think he's got a stomachache, which is like the thing that Chidi always says when he's...
Yeah, I think he's got some...
When he gets into that state.
He gets into that state, yeah.
This is great because we go through like the first, that was like the first sign of it, but the first actual moment in which he set himself down this path was when his parents were fighting. And he gave this big presentation.
His parents are fighting. They're on the verge of a divorce. Or at least he's afraid they're going to get a divorce. Yeah, and he makes this hour-long presentation.
About why they should stay together. And that single event, like, shapes the rest of his life.
Yeah, because because amazingly enough, it works, and it actually convinces them to stay together, and that makes Chidi, like, believe that, it sets Chidi on the path his life takes, because he was successful with that. He starts believing that he could find the answer if he just, like, find the answer to anything if he, like, investigates hard enough,
Yeah, and this is like his fatal flaw.
Yeah.
This is his Achilles heel is this idea of there's always an answer. We just need to figure out the answer, like a singular answer that wraps everything up perfectly.
Like, immediately after he gives the speech, it cuts to like he's at school and he's talking to like one of his friends, and he's talking about like this epiphany he's had, how he did this with his parents and it worked, and all he has to do is he can find the answer to anything. And his friend is like saying, basically saying, "Come on, that's nonsense. You don't really believe that. Come on." And he's like, "No, it's true." And then like the teacher walks in and she tells, "Okay, take your seats." And like Chidi's looking around like thinking, "Okay, if I sit back there's a fan, but if I sit up here, that's the optimal place to like see the teacher." And then he's like looking back and forth and like, like he starts getting anxiety because he doesn't know where to sit. And the teacher gets annoyed. She's like, "Chidi."
There's another part where you see a ex-girlfriend he had.
Yes.
And how, he, like, basically she, like, questioned one of his points and talked about how, like, philosophy's good, but, if you really want to find the answer, isn't there more, in the study in, like, was it, astrophysics or something? I can't remember what it was, but, and physics. He was like, should I change my major?
It was just physics.
Yeah, he was like, should I change my major?
Yeah. It's funny because they're kind of have an argument. And she's like, she kind of like says, physics, you're not. Yeah, she's like arguing like her field physics versus his field philosophy, and she kind of chides him. She's like, you're not going to find the answer to everything through philosophy. Physics is real science. Physics is what has the answer. And Chidi starts out by like trying to refute her, and then he ends up with like, it's like, wait, really? Should I switch to physics?
Yeah, you can see this panic in it. You could see how that relationship fell apart. There was a great moment where when the relationship was falling apart, and she was like, oh, you don't like see me or like, she's like I do. And then he like was gonna like approach her like he was gonna say something insightful, and then he walked right past her and grabbed like a book on.
No, he approached her like he said no. He said something like, no, I'll prove it to you. And then it looked like he was just going to take her and kiss her. That's what she was waiting for. She's literally waiting for him to kiss her. And he walks right past her and grabs a book on Kant. And then that's when she's like, she gets so pissed off she leaves. She's like, ugh. And she storms out the door.
Yeah, you could just see how everything fell apart in his relationship, how this fatal flaw has affected his life. And then you start to get the real kind of context that he ends up getting, which is the thing that contextualizes his everything for him, which is his meeting with Eleanor. And you get it not only in the original A Good Place, but you get these scenes that we never saw before, because it's mixing scenes we've seen and scenes we haven't.
Like scenes we haven't. Like when Chidi first gets to the afterlife, we get to see Michael when he was still like an evil demon bent on torturing these people. Like we see him
That was great. Do you want to go to the office, or would you rather sit here?
Yeah. The first thing
right from the very beginning.
Do you want to go into my office, or you're more comfortable here? He's like, and Chidi is immediately like, well, what? Like, immediately, like, he doesn't know. He's already, and then Michael's like, just kidding, come into my office. And that's great, yeah. And then we see like Michael, pairs him up with Eleanor, and the reason he originally pairs them up with Eleanor is because he thinks like they're just going to torture each other. He says they're soulmates, and it's weird because it has like the opposite effect of what he wants. And I love it when they're going through like the different afterlives. After like the resets, and we see like all these different like soulmates Michael gave Chidi instead of Eleanor on the reboots, and like there's this one like goth woman.
Yeah. Oh, who's obsessed with her birds.
Yeah, who was obsessed with her ravens and stuff, and they're doing charades, and she's like, blood, rivers of blood, despair, and Chidi is like, I don't know, and she's like, birthday parties, and then she's like,
and she's just frustrated he doesn't.
And she's
get
frustrated,
it.
And she's like, how do you get birthday parties from that? And it's funny because he's frustrated. She's frustrated. She walks off. She goes, I'm going to tend to my ravens. And she walks off. And that's when, Tahani approaches Chidi, and she sets him up with Eleanor. And it kind of reinforces that, like, even without Michael explicitly setting them up, they seem to always find each other. Regardless.
What's interesting here, too, because it happens in the scene with Tahani, it also happens in a scene earlier with Jason, is that through this thing, Chidi is getting advice from all of the people involved in this.
I love it, the scene where Chidi's talking to Jason, because Jason really is the exact opposite of Chidi. He is like Chidi's exact opposite. He is not very smart, but he's also very confident in what he does. Jason never second guesses himself. And we see Chidi is mystified by this. Chidi does not know why Jason is so confident. And Jason is like, well, you just gotta do it and not think about the consequence. You gotta be like, when you see a drone, you throw a Molotov cocktail at it and it blows up. It's like, you just gotta do it. Because this was when Jason married Janet, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Chidi was so mystified about. Chidi was like, how could you just, how can you just marry Janet like that? Without even, like, considering what that means. And Jason's like, I thought it was the thing to do. I didn't really think about it. And Janet's just like, some people would say, I'm too old to get married. I'm infinity. Yeah. And she's like, I've never done this before either. And it's like the whole thing, like, it blows Chidi's mind,
Yeah. Well, it's always like this, because this happens not only with Jason, but it happens with Tahani, it happens with Eleanor, it happens with Michael, it happens with Janet.
Yeah, because these characters they make decisions and they're confident in those decisions. And Chidi Chidi recognizes this. Chidi also says, he doesn't have that confidence. He doesn't see how other people can be so confident. And he wants to, and that's why he tries to go and he tries to learn how other people can have this confidence that he can't bring himself to.
That's basically what this whole episode is about.
Yeah.
It's about who Chidi is, about his Achilles heel, about where that came from, about how he's been like that and what it did to his life, and then about all of these events that make him second guess the way he is, and that kind of give him more context into the way he should see things. And that all leads to the end, which we'll get to later, but I think the best of these scenes of advice that he gets is when he talks to Michael.
Yes.
And he's talking to Michael about it, and he talks to him about soulmates.
And this was...
And he's all, do soulmates really exist?
This was after Michael reformed, so yeah.
Yeah. And this is right when Chidi is about to get his memories wiped.
Yeah, this was the scene when Michael was taking Chidi to wipe his memories, and Chidi, knowing at this point that the whole soulmate thing was bullshit, just wants to know from Michael if it's something that genuinely exists, or if it's just all bullshit. And
then Michael basically says, like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
He's like, but our implementation of it was specifically to torture you.
Right, exactly.
Like, that was its purpose.
Yeah.
But then Michael says something insightful, which is that, maybe your soulmate isn't like who you're meant to be with, but it's not who you're born as, it's who you make.
Right.
It's the relationship you build and develop. You create your soulmates.
Right.
By forming a relationship. And this is really important. And then Chidi writes a note and gives it to Janet.
Yes.
And tells Janet to give it to him if they meet again. Not just him, but that him.
Right, that him.
If the him with this knowledge has it. And so this goes to when he does get all of his memories back and he's back, he just seems calmer. Like, he just seems mellow and at peace. It's like a different character.
It's interesting
almost.
Because he comes back and Eleanor immediately tells him, like, they need him to create basically a new afterlife. And instead of freaking out, like, which is kind of what they expected, Chidi seems super calm about it.
He's like, okay, well then let's get to work.
Let's get to work. And then he asks Janet for a note that he gave her, and Janet is kind of like, well, if you're asking me for a note, then you already know what it says. And he's like,
you already know what's on it, yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, but I want to read it anyway.
He said, I think it's the best writing I've ever done.
He said, I think it's the best writing I've ever done. And I love it.
And the note's very simple. It brought a tear to my eye.
I love it because he folds it up halfway and it says, there is no answer. And then he folds it up the rest of the way and then it says, Eleanor is the answer.
Yeah.
Which, that brought a tear to my eye. That was all the feels.
Yeah, they did such a good job of, like, not only using clips of their relationship as it developed through the series, but also using new clips from times that we just didn't see.
Yeah, there were new clips.
In these different times.
There were some clips
to really just play it up.
But there were definitely, like, a lot of new clips too, to really, like, give context to earlier scenes from, like, earlier in the show.
Yeah, and we can see the result that all of this had is that, as I said, with Mr. Robot, the whole show was recontextualized for the audience.
Right.
For In the Good Place, everything, his whole life was recontextualized for Chidi.
Like, we as a viewer didn't learn anything new in this episode, really, but it was, it was recontextualization for Chidi as a character.
Which was great, because you see a character literally changing over the course of a single episode, like deep, in a deep and fundamental way, which is like really powerful. So I really enjoyed that. It's gonna be sad not having The Good Place on.
It is. I'm gonna miss it.
I mean, at least there's still more episodes.
There's more episodes.
Man, even like, God, after this episode too, it's like I just want to jump right back in.
And you know what? It kind of sucks though, because we're going on this hiatus, and as far as the plot goes, we haven't moved an inch from where it ended last episode.
Yeah, but that's fine, because this is the kind of stuff that I love about The Good Place.
This is the kind of
this episode. Yeah. The character development in this episode was great. The character
development was great. But I was like, but it's going on hiatus, and the plot didn't move at all. If it wasn't going on hiatus,
there's still quite a few episodes left for.
If it wasn't going on hiatus for like over a month, it'd be nicer. But yeah. This is probably something that'd be a lot less frustrating if you're binge watching.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about network schedules, that they just do this and they leave you hanging for over a month when you want more.
This show model that the model we had before Netflix did the whole binge viewing thing is actually kind of coming back though, if you think about it. I mean, that's Disney Plus is week to week. The Apple Plus is week to week.
I think the reason they're doing that, I think the thinking is, if you dump all the episodes at once, people will subscribe for a show that they want to watch all the episodes, and unsubscribe. This at least commits people to subscribe for at least more than 1 month.
This show model, the idea, the old style of like week to week, is why I'm kind of sad because we're not going to be talking about Watchmen until like it's done.
Right.
We're going to be talking about the final season in one go. We'd already kind of decided on that. But, watching it now, I'm having that same thing. Like, I'm enjoying the week to week nature. I'm enjoying like having some fucked up things happen, going, what the hell was that? Going online, participating in communications about it, talking to people about what happened, and speculating and stuff like that. It's very much bringing me back to like that Lost mentality.
Right.
Of like, every episode you're like, what the hell does this mean? And you're like, talking it out with other people.
I had to cut HBO out of my budget, I don't have time.
Well, there's only so much we can do in our discussions.
There's only so much we can do in a week. I don't have time for all these shows anyway, like with school and everything. So it's like, it's kind of a bad moment for Watchmen to come out. I'm sorry, but yeah.
But yeah, but it's just interesting, these different formats, because once Netflix did the binge watching thing, people were like, everything should be binge watched. But as I'm watching, and we get that reconfirmed when we watch things like Westworld, and we're like, this show would probably be better if we binge watched it, And then we were talking about this format with The Good Place in here, and how it can be a little bit frustrating. I think in other ways though, I like that The Good Place is like this, because over the time we've really gotten invested in these characters in a way that I don't know if we would have if we had binge watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just don't have as much time to like marinate with the characters. But like Watchmen is like the perfect example of like, no, this show needed to be week to week. Like, it'll be good binge too, but week to week it like really drew out its strengths from that, So it's interesting. I'm actually really glad that things are kind of happening this way, because the whole point is that I think people are debating over what's the best model. Is it binge watch or is it week to week? And it's like, it's both. It depends on the show,
Right.
Some shows are great as binge watches. Some shows are great as week to week. So I just wanted to say that at the end. But yeah, that's it for The Good Place until January. Now I'm just going to talk about what's coming up in the weeks ahead. So we're recording this on Saturday, November 23rd. But on Friday, November 22nd, The Accident came to Hulu, The Feed to Amazon Prime, Dolly Parton's Heartstrings to Netflix, Dragon Prince to Netflix, High Seas to Netflix, and Nobody's Looking to Netflix. Of course, Friday, it's Netflix Day.
Yeah.
On Thursday, November 28th, Levius comes to Netflix, Merry Happy Whatever to Netflix, Mytho to Netflix, and Servant to Apple TV Plus. This is Thanksgiving, by the way. So, you can watch Apple TV's horror series. You could watch that on Thanksgiving if you want. Then on Friday, November 29th, the Harley Quinn animated series comes to DC Universe, and La Reina del Sur comes to Netflix. Another foreign series. That's one of Netflix's greatest strengths now, is that they're expanding to so many different territories, and then they're opening up development of shows in all of those territories. So we're getting a lot of foreign content, which is really cool because it's part of the flood of Netflix content, as you just have it from everywhere.
Right.
Then on Wednesday, December 4th, 2019, Toast of London comes to IFC. The Moody's miniseries comes to Fox. And Vikings returns to history. On Thursday, December 5th, Tell Me a Story comes to CBS All Access. And lastly, on Friday, December 6th, In the Long Run comes to Starz, Truth Be Told to Apple TV+, Reprisal to Hulu, and The Marvelous Miss Maisel to Amazon Prime, which I'm real excited about that, the third season of that show. So, that's it. That's what's coming up in the week ahead. Next week, as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about Mr. Robot. Not The Good Place, though, because The Good Place is on hiatus.
Is on hiatus. We could talk about The Good Place, but we'd be talking about old stuff.
We'll talk about the pilot of The Good Place, we'll talk about, as if we've never seen the show.
Yes. Wow, this show is, I bet this is really heaven. I bet Ted Danson is really an angel. No twists at all.
Yeah.
No, it'll just be Mr. Robot. It promises to be an exciting episode of Mr. Robot, but unfortunately, it'll probably be a shorter podcast than usual, but we'll get through it.
Yep. So yeah, until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Foxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotoscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So check that out, as well as any past content we have. Hey, go rewatch Hannibal and then watch our Hannibal discussions. How about that?
Yeah.
Hannibal's on Amazon Prime, by the way. So go watch Hannibal. If there's one show that Will and I can recommend to people, that's probably it, right?
Yeah, Hannibal. Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Watch that, and then after you watch an episode, check out our, did we start on season 2? Or no, I think we started on season 3 that we did our discussions.
I thought we were doing discussions in season. If we weren't doing discussions before season 3, then that's a travesty. I was watching that show since season 1, so I don't know what the hell we were doing.
Yeah, we were both talking about it a lot. I think we talked about it a lot on the podcast, but I don't think we actually did video discussions until season 3.
Yeah, okay. Well, go and watch those after you watch the episodes.
Yeah, and you can get that experience of watching along with us. Even though we record these a long time ago, you watch an episode, watch our discussion of it, and you can feel like you're in the conversation with us, and then move on to the next one.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification for more podcasts are uploaded to YouTube every week.
It's our YouTube horror moment.
Yes. Gotta have that.
So thank you everybody for listening. Good night. If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best